are not books. They are the very living essences of nature itself.
Unbelievably powerful supercomputer that's running our reality, and we don't have a clue as to how to operate it.
Say in your mind, say to yourself, I am more than my physical body, because I am more than physical matter. I can perceive that which is greater than the physical world.
Broadcasting from an undisclosed location somewhere in the deep and mossy creek bottoms of Cane Creek, Arkansas. Live from Forest Tower Studios, brought to you by the Fringe FM and KTOK Digital Broadcasting. This is Lighting the Void. And now, your host, Joe Rupe.
Nice to be in orbit.
That's right, all the way from Forest Tower Studios in the mossy creek bottoms of Cane Creek, Arkansas. I'm Joe Rupe, and this is Lighting the Void. Voices for verity in this crazy realm of polarity. Damn, I'm glad to be back. It is Tuesday, May the 29th, and the night is perfect here, and the moon is full in the natural state as it shines bright on into midnight. Fire up your chakras, sync both hemispheres of your brain together, and shoot your magical beam of light through your third eye tonight with us as we peer into the void. Thanks for joining us. We are live on lightingthevoid.com, KTOK Digital Broadcasting, thefringe.fm, and all the places that the Fringe FM is at. TalkStream Live, TuneIn, all those lovely places across the web, tons of them. If for any reason, and this actually might happen, and I'm hearing in some places in the East Coast, if you can still use your phone, you can always listen to the show using that TalkStream Live number, 701-719-3971. Tonight, we're going to be speaking with the man, the myth, the maverick, Micah Hanks. This is going to be a cool conversation. I know we're going to go down the rabbit hole the right way tonight. Tomorrow night, we're going to have John Brisson on from FixYourGut.com. Pretty interesting guest this weekend. We'll be back with Spaced Out Saturday this weekend. Now, if you guys haven't heard Micah Hanks' podcast or his show or read any of his books, or I'm just saying, you're missing out. Because I believe there are people that are in this truth movement nowadays, I guess you could say from my generation, that are really doing great work, and Micah is one of those. So if it's your first night here at Lighting the Void, or your first night you've ever heard Micah Hanks, you're in for a treat. But like I said, tomorrow night we're going to have John Brisson on too. I didn't get the flyer up for that, but I will as soon as the show's over. The call-in number for the show is 501-777-5631. I want to say thank you to all of you who have supported us, donated to the show. Keep them coming because we really need it right now. It's about the first of the month, so if you can support the show, that would be great. And whatever you can do. If you can't support, just share and like and subscribe. Everything Lighting the Void. Speaking of which, our little YouTube channel just pegged 1,000 subscribers. So that is big for me. The little family of Lighting the Void has grown. And once it hit 1,000, it was weird. We got a new subscriber every single day after that. So I think it's kind of germinating over there. And it's just a place where I put the archives up. But a lot of people like to listen to the show on YouTube. So I guess as long as we stay politically correct and we don't, push any buttons or poke the bear too much, we'll be on YouTube over there. So I appreciate all of you guys subscribing. You can get into the chat room over on Spreaker under Lighting the Void as well, or the Fringe FM chat. If you go to lightingthevoid.com/chat or the Fringe FM /chat, you can go into the Discord chat there. The channel is building rapidly. I want to give a quick shout out to Dennis, Eric Markham, Brian, Ramon, and Denise. All of you. I love you so much. Thank you for all of your help and everything that you've done for me. So yeah, anyways, if you find anything of value from this or the network, please donate if you can. Speaking of that as well, I am very proud of this community. Sometimes I talk about I don't have much faith in, truth seekers. Sometimes we say we're enlightened, but I'm not so sure. However, Ramon sent me a message about, hey, Tom Campbell's doing his thing about trying to prove that we live in a simulated reality. And I believe if there is one man that can do it, he and his team could do it. And everybody rallied on Kickstarter. and he met his goal. Actually, he's above his goal. I think it was like $150,000 is what he needed. He hit it good. He hit the mark real good. So I'm saying that there's a man out there that might actually prove scientifically, I know this sounds crazy, not just with the double slit experiment, but other experiments they're planning on doing, that we live in a simulated reality. Now, to what extent this reality is actually simulated, or the semantics of all of that, I do not know. But just to know that that could be proved scientifically would be awesome. So thank you, all of you. If any of you guys actually donated that got our post or Ramon's post, I can't wait to see what they're going to come up with. So Spaced Out Saturday was an interesting show we did with Rich Giordano, actually. And it went crazy, but we did an intention experiment at the end of the show because my cat went missing. And I said, I want everybody to do an intention to see. It was just a little play thing, really. It didn't mean much, but I want everybody to do an intention to see if the cat will come in during the break. Well, it didn't come in the break, but I'll be damned, as soon as the show went off, as soon as I hit the stop button, I heard his meow, and he walked right in the door. So I'd like to think that you guys did that as well, too. So I appreciate that as well. I am going to give a thanks to the new social media followers, but I'm going to save that for tomorrow night because I got something special tomorrow night to talk about. I want to get into the news real quick. Don't forget, though, on Twitter, if you want to put anything up, it's hashtag LTV Radio, and got the Facebook stuff flying here. But, yeah, that's what that is. We got to do the Gilson Report real fast here. Always got to do that. Little news ducket. Biohackers. Something we haven't talked about in a long time, but on the morning of April the 29th, a spa in Washington, D.C. discovered the lifeless body of one of its clients lying face down in a sensory. Now, this is the Solex spa, but this guy was lying face down in one of those sensory deprivation tanks. You all know what that is. We've talked about him before. He was a 28-year-old man. His name was Aaron Trawick. Less than 3 months earlier, he had injected himself live on stage at an event in Austin, Texas, with an untested gene therapy that he claimed could cure herpes. Now, there's a lot of this going around, people doing biohacking and stuff, but the stories kind of spread around the discoveries of Trawick's body with some, inferring a potential link between the do-it-yourself treatment that he was trying to do for herpes caused his death. But the people that knew the guy and that were familiar with his work said that, they suspected something that was a little bit more evil. Now, he was part of a fringe but steadily growing community known as body hackers or biohackers. I'm sure you guys have heard of this. It's a modest goal. Their goal is to cure disease and end aging, and ultimately they want to stop death. So these are these live forever type people. I don't know why he was testing himself like that. I don't know. That sounds crazy to me, but he did inject himself on stage in Austin just before injecting himself in the leg with his therapy that he came up with. And he said is because if we succeed with the herpes, even in the most minor of ways, if we cure this, we can move forward immediately with cancer. But he ended up dead in a sensory deprivation tank. So that's unfortunate. So you guys out there, I told you about this. These live forever transhumanist guys, it's really great to try to do this stuff, but please be careful. Don't follow whatever science that you think is going to do this stuff. I mean, we shouldn't be doing this. We should leave this up to scientists. I know that the system isn't getting it done, but as far as cures go, but this whole live forever thing, that's just scary. To me, I think it's kind of evil to want to live forever, but that's my opinion. Life and death, the whole cycle of life, death, resurrection, that's natural. That's a natural law. We're already living longer than we used to. But it's when people want to do stuff like this, or they want to inject things into their mind or inject things into their bloodstream or try to beat aging. I don't know. Jeff sent this to me and he said, people are trying to live forever. They're going to do it in our lifetime. I don't think so, because this guy was a transhumanist star. He was a big star. And his escapades had pushed him into the public. So, I mean, can you imagine what would happen to Big Pharma if transhumanists like this guy are in charge? So I mean, we might arrive at a day when there is no disease and no death. And it just seems real dangerous to even think about stuff like that. So I want to hear your feedback on that. You can email the show at contact@lightingthevoid. Moving on here. A mysterious wolf-like creature shot in north central Montana near Denton. Some type of hybrid or a creature that hasn't been seen in Montana since the Ice Age, possibly. I don't know. Weird-looking thing. But this was back on the 16th. It's been flooding around the social media. It's a lone wolf-like animal. It was shot and killed at a ranch outside Denton with long grayish fur, a large head, and extended snout. It shared a lot of the same characteristics as a wolf, but its ears were really big. Its legs and body were kind of short. Its fur was uncharacteristic of a common wolf. So far, no one knows what this thing is. So what was it? At this point, nobody's 100% sure still. But I think Montana Fish and Wildlife, the only people that have actually released a statement about this thing, and they're quoting here, "We've had no idea what this was until we get a DNA report back." And the information manager, this was the information manager for Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. It was near a rancher's place. It was shot, and our game wardens went out to investigate it. The whole animal was sent to our lab in Bozeman, but that's the last I've heard of it. Now, everybody, watch how fast this disappears. That's what I'm going to say here. That this story is going to disappear because we're going to forget about it. We're going to get distracted by something else, and no one's going to know. So let's stay on this thing. Let's see what they do. Last one here. I like this kind of rapid fire deal going. A U.S. aircraft carrier was stalked for days by a UFO traveling at ballistic missile speed. A leaked Pentagon report has revealed new details about the UFO encounter that shocked Navy fighter pilots above the Pacific. The 2009 report does not bear any date or agency logo, but four officials confirmed that it was written as a part of a Pentagon program with input from multiple agencies. The Las Vegas news station obtained the unclassified report while visiting Washington, D.C. for a debriefing arranged by former Senator Harry Reid. This sounds like some DeLong mischief here. The report reveals stunning new first-hand accounts of the November 14, 2004 encounter, which was documented in video that emerged in December of last year. So we've all seen that, but apparently new stuff's coming out. The incident unfolded as the Nimitz carrier group was conducting training exercises off the coast of Southern California and Mexico ahead of a deployment to the Arabian Sea. Now, I don't know. See, I don't know what to believe about this. I'm kind of skeptical of anything that's going to come out about this right now, but it's cool. Disclosure is happening. A slow leak of disclosure. So, yeah, we got the guys trying to cure themselves, injecting themselves on stage in front of the public, I guess because he felt like he was pressurized to do it. You know, peer pressure's a bitch, right? So you want to keep your transhumanist agendas to yourself, please. Don't get the crowd involved. That's all I got to say about that. Crazy wolf-like creature. Keep your eye on that. I bet you they're going to bury that story. And there's more coming out about these reports and this disclosure in December. So pretty cool stuff. I do want to make a quick statement about the show. Lighting the Void is, the family is growing just a little bit. And when I say family, I don't mean it like, I mean, a lot of you guys that listen, I don't know you, so I'm not going to make you pretend that we're family, but we are, I would think we are kind of brothers and sisters on the same agenda here. So if you join the chat rooms, or if you support the show, let's all be nice. We all are after the same thing. We're all trying to figure out what's going on here. Why are we here? Which is why I'm glad Micah Hanks is on. I specifically want to talk about the book that I read, Magic, Mysticism, and the Molecule. And I want to talk to Micah as we talk about these things on this show. He has a really cool way of putting it all together in this book. I highly recommend you get that book, by the way. But this is going to be one of those shows that's going to go down for the records. I think it is anyways. You guys don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with Micah Hanks right after these words.
Weebly.com, and you're listening to KTLK, The Fringe FM.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
This is Reverend John M. Polk from johnpolkmedia.com, and you can listen to my show, The Quantum Hologram Matrix, every Thursday night. ETs, UFOs, metaphysics, the paranormal, and more are some of the many topics we will cover on The Quantum Hologram Matrix. Make sure you bring your higher concentric multidimensional selves. That's every Thursday night, 5 p.m. Pacific, right here on The Fringe FM.
If you have hard water, the lime scale not only leaves white spots, it clogs pipes and breaks down appliances, costing you hundreds of dollars in energy and wear. Eliminate lime scale and other water issues like brown staining and bad odors with HydroCare water products available from Wave Home Solutions. Wave's affordable water systems don't use salts or chemicals. You'll love the way your water tastes, smells, and looks. Satisfaction guaranteed. For more information, go to bestwater123.com. That's bestwater123.com.
Oh, you know what I like about me? This is Rich Giordano, host of The Paranormal Code. No, I'm serious. The show's on twice a week now, Sunday and Thursday, on thefringe.fm and Spreaker, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 Pacific. Yeah, it's 2 hours. It's live. And I do a show like you've never heard before. So you're going to come here, you're going to get your information, you're going to be entertained. But you're also going to hear the truth like, you know, you won't forget. Like you've never heard before. And for those of you who've been following, thank you. Thank you for talking me into this extra night. Now I'm on twice. Great. Hey, good for you, right? The Paranormal Code. This means something.
Do you find yourself bored and longing to learn more about the mysteries and conspiracies behind our reality? Specifically, every Friday night from 7 to 9 Pacific? What a coincidence, because that's exactly when me, Gigi, and my lovely co-host Cortana kicked over the airwaves with just the right amount of intellectual stimulation to give you that eargasm of conversational excellence that you deserve. So be sure to check out our show, Shift Happens, every Friday night from 7 to 9 Pacific, that's 9 to 11 Central. And let's shake some talk radio tail feather, shall we? Right here on KTLK, The Fringe FM.
KTLK Digital Broadcasting, TheFringe.FM, Napa Valley, California, Little Rock, Arkansas.
You've probably heard about all the great benefits of goat milk soap, but did you know some companies take shortcuts? At Old New England Soap, we make our organic goat's milk soap using 36% goat's milk. That's 17% more than most others. Our bars are larger, so they last longer, producing lots of lather packed with vitamins. And our soap is a natural moisturizer that smooths dry and damaged skin. Order online at oldnesoap.com. That's oldnesoap.com. You've tried the rest. Now try the best. oldnesoap.com.
Water-based soaps on supermarket shelves use harsh chemical acids to break down dead skin cells. And that's just not good for you. At Old New England Soap, our soaps are made without chemical ingredients, contain no alcohol or petroleum products, and use 85% organic materials and carry the USDA's organic certification. Try some today. Go to oldnesoap.com. That's oldnesoap.com. oldnesoap.com.
Hi there, this is Dave Scott from Spaced Out Radio, and you're listening to KTLK, The Fringe FM.
Welcome back to Lighting the Void. I am your host, Joe Rupe. Thanks for sticking around. We are live on the Fringe FM. Don't forget, when we open the phones up, the number is 501-777-5631 if you want to call in. I'm thinking about just leaving the phone lines open from here on out on this show, just in case. And you can chat, again, as well, in the Spreaker chat or on the Fringe FM or Lighting the Void chat as well. Now let's bring on our guest, Micah Hanks. Micah is a writer, podcaster, and researcher whose interests cover a variety of subjects. His areas of focus include history, science, philosophy, current events, cultural studies, technology, unexplained phenomena, and ways the future of humankind may be influenced by science and innovation in the coming decades. Now, podcasting became a hobby for Micah in early of 2011 after a 6-year stint working in radio as a producer and on-air talent. Since then, he has continued to pursue his passion for information-driven talk programming through a variety of podcasts, including the Gralien Report, fantastic podcast, a science and unexplained mysteries program, as well as an unfiltered current events podcast called Middle Theory, co-hosted with longtime friend and fellow commentator Christopher McCollum. Now, history and archaeology are among Micah's favorite areas of study, separate from his archaeological interests. The controversy surrounding artificial intelligence, surveillance, and the broadening of human knowledge through the World Wide Web have also become areas of focus for Micah. As a writer, Micah has written for several sites such as Mysterious Universe, countless articles, and featured in various journals. He is also the author of The Ghost Rockets, Magic, Mysticism, and the Molecule, Reynolds Mansion, An Invitation to the Past, The Complete, A Guide to Maverick Podcasting, and the UFO Singularity. So you can learn more about Micah's show, books, his journeys, his radio appearances, and more. Go to the website at MicahHanks.com. Micah, welcome back to Lighting the Void, brother. It's good to have you on here.
Oh, my brother Joe, it is good to be here with you, man. And I got to just pay you a compliment right off the bat, because every time I come on your show and I listen to the quality of the production and the pacing of your show, I mean, truly to me, you're one of the up-and-coming talents in online broadcast. I feel right at home with you. I think it's more than just the regional accent, too. So good job. Kudos. Keep it up.
Yeah, it is comforting to talk to you. I've got this thing where I know that I sound like a Southerner. And for some reason, a part of my head always thinks, like, am I sounding dumb? I always have that in the back of my mind. And then, you know what makes me feel better? And I'm not just blowing smoke. If I go listen to the Gralien Report or anything you do, I get to listen to a Southern man tear it up intellectually, and it's really cool. You guys are really missing out if you hadn't heard his show. And I said the other night, and I'll say it again on Shift Happens, and I'm not trying to make you do it or push you out there, but if you were on 5 nights a week, I don't know that I would do a radio show. I'd probably just listen to you.
Well, don't throw in the towel too soon. And, you know, I've often thought about that. In fact, I've had people say to me, why don't you do your show more nights per week? You know, you've got the one show that you do on Monday nights, which is the live radio show, and then the other podcasts and things. Mm-hmm. But it's, as you know, it's such a commitment to have to do that. And, you know, I don't think I'm to a point in my life yet where sitting down and hosting a radio show is the sole focus of what I want to do. I tell you, I keep entertaining the idea of going back to college. You know, I've got 2 years in community college, but then I went off to work in radio, as you mentioned there in the introduction. I worked in radio professionally for a number of years, and then when I got out of that, I thought, you know, I'd like to be able to be a writer and a commentator, but be able to stay in that audio realm of things, and podcasting was really kind of just becoming a thing at that point. And like a lot of guys, you know, I got into it. We didn't know what we were doing. We're just producing audio, uploading it, you know, putting it online, hoping somebody would listen. And so many years later, this industry has changed so much. But fundamentally, at the core, I see a podcast or a radio broadcast as just one of many ways to communicate with people, which is it's really, I think, the most important aspect of what we do.
Yeah, I mean,
you know?
I love it. I really do. But it's not just the fun of radio, but it's like, you know, I do a fast news report like that because I want to be able to express my opinions about things the way you do, you know, and I actually take, God, I hate sucking up, but I'm being truthful here. You are kind of like a mentor to me in this deal, just to let you know. And I'm sure you're a mentor to other people as well. I've got lots of opinions about the stuff I just talked about. I just haven't figured out how to express them yet, especially the wolf thing, you know?
Well, you know what you got to do, Joe, and this is at the bottom. I'm glad you bring that up because this is really important, I think. You've got to be, this is what drove me to skepticism. A lot of my friends in the community both respect, but also I think that they feel a little, I don't know, they feel a little animosity or perhaps perceive me as being the one who is antagonistic with skepticism. I think that there's this sad condition of modern skepticism that people think they have to have bad attitudes, that they have to resort to ad hominem. I see particularly people of certain political ideologies or people who identify more with a sort of identity politics. And let's just be clear, that can fall on both the left or the right. It's not something that is exclusive to one area of the political spectrum, but people who are politically active, and rather than being individualists in their thought process and the way that they relate to other people and to reality in general, if they fall into a sort of cookie-cutter ideology, then they tend to be those who, despite having obvious eloquence in language and thought and an ability to construct an argument, they are all too quick to rely on things like ad hominem attacks to get their point across. Unfortunately, this is a huge telltale marker of what I call modern skepticism. I'm not that. And coming back to what you're talking about, finding a way to express what you really think and do it eloquently, the first thing is be true. Be true to yourself. You may not always be right. In fact, I can guarantee you won't always be right.
You got that right.
But what you can do is you can work to the best of your ability to educate yourself and to learn. I've not always been right. I've been horribly wrong about a lot of things throughout the course of my life and also through my career, and I've had to update my opinions, which to me is another one of those sad things. You're not supposed to do that these days. You're made fun of if you change your mind. Well, God, why then do we try to bring other people to our argument? Why then is it so important that we have a college education system where people go to school and they learn and they challenge their old ideas and learn new things and bring concepts that are backed by evidence and science to the table? Anyone who attacks you for changing your mind, they don't understand the fundamental concept of education. Anyone who resorts to ad hominem to get the point across doesn't really have an opinion. They are stooges, pawns, puppets. To be true to yourself, to be an individual, okay, the first step is just to say, what do I really think? Have I educated myself on this position? Do I feel comfortable in the knowledge I've attained, and can I now speak about it? But once you have done those things and you go forth and you speak and you share your ideas with people, again, once you are being true to yourself and you possess the gift of knowledge, the voice comes with it, and it takes a long time. It's a process. It's a path, but you're on that path. I'm still on that path. I'm not some sort of a guru sitting in a cave someplace.
No, but you are practiced, and I'll tell this to all the hosts on the network too. The biggest advice I could give anybody, and we're turning this into a podcasting coach session here, Micah. That's cool though, but I tell them all, practice, man. When you're in radio, they make you practice. You don't just, okay, hit the button and start, I'm ready. There's things called air checks. There's reads and all kinds of stuff. You got to do, it's just like anything else in life. Practice makes perfect. If you go back and listen to any of my old shows, they're god-awful. And I had some really good guests on there, and I felt like I really did them a disservice, And I'm still trying to get better at it. But it's... I don't know. I just think people, every time I talk about that practice thing, people just kind of shrug or get quiet. But I think it's important, even in this industry.
It's funny because, you say we're talking about podcasting, coaching, and everything, but I'm being completely genuine here. I look at this as though the entire discussion could just be about spirituality, which, by the way, let's just be clear. Spirituality, I think, is something that can exist apart from, religion or any kind of metaphysical concept. Spirituality, again, that sense of togetherness. It's a fundamental experience as a human being to sense a feeling of oneness. Have you ever looked across the room and seen a beautiful person, of the opposite sex or the same sex or whatever, and they look back at you and you feel a connection with that individual? Have you ever been with your family, and seen your child, or maybe seen your mother or your grandma or your grandfather, having a good time, and you feel a great sense of familial unity? Have you ever been in a park and watched children playing and it reminded you of childhood and you felt so good, and you see their energy and you can live for a moment vicariously through them in that sense of, again, what I think you can call effectively a spiritual unity? To me, it all comes down to this sort of spirituality, this concept of, hey, let's just be good to each other and let's do the best that we can do, and let's be the best that we can be, because in being a better version of ourselves, we are better to others. And for me, man, no amount of, like you said, I'm practiced. I've sat down and spoken into a microphone a lot over the years, but it's correcting the way that you think and understanding yourself and developing a stronger sense of self in both the mind and the body. That's what changes the way your voice sounds. That's what changes the way that you think, the way that you're able to produce, whether it's a podcast, whether you work at a bank, whether you're a teacher, whether you're, a union worker, whether you are a person who devotes their time to science or who devotes their time to theology, whatever it is you do, whatever you're passionate about. Again, it is, I think it's that fundamental unity that you find through experience and that experience of sharing it with others. And that's the thing about podcasting or live radio and why I do prefer the live medium like this, because you're having that direct kind of interaction with people.
It's more human for sure. I believe it is.
Well, yeah. Now, podcasts are great too, and I find that podcasts reach more people, and it's fascinating because it's a lot like time travel. You know, I love time travel. I can sit down and record a podcast 2 days ago, and then 4 days from now somebody's going to listen to it, but they are still sharing in that moment, even though that moment has already passed. They can live that experience with us.
Weird,
you know?
Isn't it? Thinking about it like that.
It's fascinating, and that's the thing that has drawn me into all this, that I began to kind of look at the little mysteries, you know, the small things about reality, which is really what since time immemorial philosophers have done and what today scientists are trying to do. And you, of course, have you brought up Tom Campbell.
Oh, yeah. He's one of my favorites.
The Kickstarter he's doing, you know, they're trying to assess one of the great philosophical questions right now about, you know, do we exist in some sort of a simulation? Well, again, like you had said to me during the break, when you say simulation, people think like a computer program or something like the Matrix films or like a video game. That is just the best description that we have for the problem. It may be nothing like. Again, the corollary exists only between the concept and the reality. The concept is we can create computer programs. We can watch a Sims game and say, look at all these little people walking around doing stuff. And then we self-reflect on it and go, my God, what if I'm in a Sims game? What if somebody's sitting there watching me? Right?
Exactly.
It's a conceptual kind of a idea that, again, doesn't necessarily mean that we're actually in a video game, but that concept right there resonates with us because it may bespeak a greater reality than the one which we exist within now and think is all that there is. And so I'm very glad that guys like Tom Campbell. By the way, I noticed that on May 15th, according to his Kickstarter page, he and John Kruth, an old friend of mine and the executive director at the Ryan Research Center, that they did a Q&A live. John Kruth gave me a tour of the Ryan Research Center a number of years ago, a private tour with my brother Caleb and our good friend Dakota Waddell, Susan Davidson, some of the team Gralien, you might say. But we went down and did a private tour, and it was just remarkable, some of the stuff that they're working on down there. Truly on the fringes of science, but applying science to the fringe rather than just speculating.
Yeah, and that's another topic I was going to ask you about is I don't agree with everybody that tells me about everything that comes on the show, obviously. I can't. I mean, it's just, I'm my own person. But I do speculate a lot, like John D'Souza when he was talking about the Nazca mummy and saying, you know, maybe Dr. Greer can't get any scientific help with that because people are afraid to lose their license. And I'm thinking, well, that sounds like something that the system would do, right? I mean, it does. And so I kind of got into that a little bit. I started looking around and, you know, this whole thing with Loch Ness, how they're trying to do DNA studies with that now. And they're also going to be doing, apparently, DNA studies with this wolf creature. But that's at Game and Fish. But Loch Ness was a real scientific funded event. So I'm thinking, well, they'll fund that. But I wonder if we're just speculating too much about this, about the whole political aspect of scientific research.
Well, we got to break down the constituent parts. First and foremost, with that Loch Ness study, here's the way I interpret that. They're hoping to actually do a DNA study, and they're going to be studying the wide biodiversity at Loch Ness. I mean, there are all different kinds of species to be found there. Now, sure, I bet you that they are hopeful because it would be such a great scientific discovery of our day if they found something as yet unidentified in Loch Ness. It would be a game changer, but I don't think they really expect to. I think, however, though, that by touting it as a Loch Ness study, that's all they have to say. They only have to name the lake, the particular body of water in the Scottish Highlands, and it will already attract attention. The association with the myth of the monster brings attention to the study, which promotes good science. They don't probably have a realistic expectation of finding anything. And when I was listening to one of the lead scientists who was discussing this recently, I watched a video with him. He kept talking about, it's not impossible that something like a plesiosaur could exist in Loch Ness, and probably the plesiosaur's DNA is going to resemble most closely this or that. And I'm kind of thinking that's a sort of a strange thing to say. I mean, he's presupposing that some relict saurian creature is probably what the Loch Ness Monster is. Now, sure, there is some anecdotal data that describes a long-necked creature and fairly large. But to say that it's a plesiosaur, I don't know. I mean, it seems kind of antithetical to the argument of let's do a DNA study to see if something turns up. I mean, you don't have anything the likes of a plesiosaur to compare that to, so how do you know that that's what you're going to get at the end of the day? Now, there are plenty of other animal species, reptiles, that this probably could be compared to if they were able to determine that there was a mysterious trace, genetically or otherwise, that they could attribute to some as yet unknown reptile. That might be interesting. We might have to kind of look at it and go, okay, then, well, what is that? Might not turn out to be anything more than a snake. I mean, I don't know. But the thing is that it would be interesting if we did find evidence, signatures in DNA or otherwise, that would be indicative of something that we didn't expect to find at Loch Ness. I just think, however, that they are utilizing the popularity of that myth to promote a study that is really not related to Loch Ness as far as the monster goes.
Yeah, it's like you never know what's going on. That's why I was saying I'm always paranoid when it comes to government funded stuff, because I don't trust my government, Micah. I really don't. And there's just been too many things that, especially now with Black Vault and all this stuff. It's a rabbit hole that just spirals out of control. I've driven myself crazy trying to look at all the conspiracies. But what I will say is, if we read these stories and the next day something else comes out, it's like I've noticed that we don't really stay on top of things unless they're really big. So some of this stuff can just go away. Like it really slips our mind. Like it's this wolf thing. It could just be some type of weird hybrid, like you're saying, The wolf that you described, and I want to come back around to the fundamental mistrust or distrust that we have for government here in a moment, but the wolf thing that you're talking about out of Montana, I've seen the photographs. When the initial reports were released, people were actually emailing them to me and saying, this seems kind of fishy because they're describing something, but there aren't any photos. Well, since then, photos have appeared online. I've looked at those photos. They're interesting. My best guess for what we're looking at in the photographs, it doesn't look entirely unlike a dog or a wolf, but it doesn't quite look like a typical dog breed that we would recognize or a wild canine, i.e. a wolf. It seems very likely to me, therefore, that it's probably some sort of a cross breed. Not impossible, by the way, and this has been proposed by experts. But again, once we get the results from U.S. Fish and Wildlife, who, as I understand, are currently the ones conducting the test, I mean, presumably they'll be able to tell us if that's what we're looking at. The problem is that while we're waiting on those forthcoming results and that we have a more likely explanation, there are people who are jumping up and down saying dog man. They're saying this thing was an extinct variety of megafaunal wolf that once existed during the Pleistocene known as the dire wolf. That is highly unlikely. And we kind of have a running joke with my comrades, the research team known as the Seven Ages Research Associates. This is the group of guys that I do archaeological and historical research with, Jason Pentrail, James Waldo, and I. And we really do a lot of research that focuses on that era, the Pleistocene. And the dire wolf, I'm telling you, would be a much larger animal than what you see in the photographs of this thing out in Montana. This was a very large wolf, very ferocious, one of the many varieties of megafauna that if you were one of the inhabitants, of the Clovis culture or otherwise that was in North America at that time, you wouldn't have wanted to mess with this creature. I can assure you that the dire wolf probably would have been bigger than what we see in these photos. So that was the one thing that stood out about it the most, how massive it was, though, right? I mean, it wasn't short-legged like this thing.
It is very large. To me, peripherally at least, I mean, some of some aspects of this thing looked similar to a bear, but then again, I mean, if you look at the paws, and there are good photographs of the paws of this creature held up next to the palm of a gloved, either a scientist or someone who was conducting the studies there at U.S. Fish and Wildlife. I mean, it's got a very large paw, which is roughly the size of a man's, the palm of a person's hand. And it's distinctly unlike a bear. So, I mean, it's absolutely not a bear. It's obviously something more like a wolf. My guess is probably that this thing, based on what you see in the photos, which is, it still leaves a good bit to the imagination, but yeah, it looks pretty large. It was laying on the back of a flatbed in the photo that I saw earlier today. One of the news outlets out of Atlanta had been trying to get commentary from officials in Montana or at U.S. Fish and Wildlife. Neither wanted to comment on it. And the reason why is because they say, let's wait and see what the tests say. But my guess is probably that it's probably a wolf-dog hybrid of some kind that has an unusual appearance, which caters more to the mystery than the actual DNA will probably show once the tests are forthcoming. That's my guess. And again, you got to work with those more plausible, simpler explanations. The problem, though, is that when people think that very strange things, and let's face it, there are anomalous things in our world, in our existence, and to be able to explain those things is simply, that's kind of problematic. The best example you mentioned earlier during your newsreel, the USS Nimitz UFO incident. Mm-hmm. There are still people, Joe, trying to say that what the pilots who observed this and were attempting to intercept this object, that what they observed was simply a conventional aircraft, and that they were paying attention to their instrumentation, which they didn't know how to use very well, instead of the actual aircraft. And they've cooked up all these ridiculous stories as to why it was nothing any more elaborate than that. And they've said the same thing about the gimbal footage, the other footage that was released by To the Stars. Now, look, I think that there's plenty of cause for, if not outright skepticism, we need to at least exhibit caution with regard to the Stars, Tom DeLonge, and this whole UFO soft disclosure thing.
Well, here's the thing with that, Micah. I got to admit that when I saw that, I was skeptical because I'm used to looking at videos from like Tim Doyle or Rich or something where they're really catching some, or James Gilliland even, where they're really catching some stuff. And then you got this video that's coming from a gimbal camera footage. And I mean, I don't know any pilots. The only one I knew of was John Lear. So that was the first guy I talked to. About it. And he's like, look, this is not typical, but he could be wrong too. But he did get me thinking. That's one good thing I can say about John Lear is he will get you thinking about some things. But, sure. I don't know. All I know is that to me it feels like there's plenty of awesome UFO footage out there that's 100% real. And they're giving us a focus of these things. It's not even the footage, really. It's the fact that they're slowly just kind of delving it out to us when it's always been there, Well, that footage from the Nimitz incident, it may not have always been here, but it's at least been online since 2009 or so, maybe as early as 2007. And in fact, actually, it had been on the back end of a German audiovisual production company website, which courtesy of an article that had been featured, but not originally, it had been reposted at openminds.tv by probably Alejandro Rojas and the fine work that he does over there. This a link via waybackmachine.org showed that this video was still available from the original link and had been on this website. Now, they contacted the folks at this company and asked them why had this footage with none of the parameters or the technical data that had been included later, presumably by the To the Stars Academy for Arts and Science. But they wanted to know why this video had been on this website, and they said, we don't know. We didn't put it there. Now, I spoke with my friend and my research assistant, Lauren Ellis, who helps out a lot with the Gralien Report these days. And Lauren, with a background in video production and everything with an outdoor network, had said to me, well, this is actually fairly common. If law enforcement has, for instance, footage from like a game cam, they'll bring it to us because they know that we know that kind of footage better, and they will outsource our knowledge about things so as to get a better understanding from the experts. And so she said the way I would interpret that is that there was something in the footage that the U.S. government or whoever else had obtained it. They didn't know what they were looking at. They were unfamiliar with what they were seeing, and they decided to give it to a production company and try and find out, let's see if these people can look at this. Let's see if analysis can be done. Now, that's entirely speculative, but it is at least a plausible scenario. The problem with the entire idea of UFO disclosure, and when the government, it seems to all of a sudden willingly or as sort of a proxy situation like this, where we have a guy like Luis Elizondo who has purportedly worked for the Pentagon, that, by the way, confirmed by Pentagon officials, spokespeople, but he leaves. He has access to footage, which he claims that he obtained under one auspices and has released under another, but that no laws were broken, and so it's not a problem because while there isn't a definitive chain of custody attributed to those videos,
which has resulted, by the way, I'll say, in the Pentagon saying we're not sure that these are actually ours. What has happened nonetheless is that while there's confusion, Elizondo has allegedly helped, with the assistance of Tom DeLonge and To the Stars, release this footage which they say was obtained by government, but which was not actually classified. It just wasn't available to the public. Now it is, and he says there's more of it. Now, if we end up seeing more, that'll be great, but what we've seen has left an awful lot to the imagination. And so we're all kind of left standing around going, well, what exactly does this mean? I mean, is this proof? Can we trust the source? Now, coming back to what you said earlier about I don't trust my government, Micah.
No, I don't.
Why in the world wouldn't you trust your government? But here's the thing. Is there not more than plenty of historical precedent for distrust of government agencies? I mean, again, if we look back at the earliest days of the FBI and the collection of information on the citizenry, the CIA and their illegal operations with the MK-Ultra program, people roll their eyes and act like this is all conspiracy theories. Folks, there were Senate hearings held in the 1970s on up to the 1990s trying to get to the bottom of just what the CIA had done and how illegal it was, and they purged the files. The files, in large part, not all, but probably vast majority of them, were destroyed because they wanted to cover their rear ends. We can look at any number of other instances, and we can certainly look, if we want to have an example that relates to ufology, we can look at the NSA doing tests out there at Kirtland Air Force Base and having the U.S. Air Force Office of Special Investigations lie to Paul Benowitz about the reception of alien messages. They weren't alien messages. It was NSA studies. But he was told what he was inclined to believe anyway, which was that he was intercepting UFO alien messages. He was led to believe this despite the truth because they found it as a better cover for their story and hence precedent for why Americans might be lied to in the first place about UFOs. It is an absolute
certainty.
It happens, but it is the best example. And again, for those who aren't familiar with this case, please read my good friend Greg Bishop's book, Project Beta. It is all about this. I mean, it is the best historical account, I think, of the Benowitz case. It's a very sad affair, what role the U.S. government played in it and why they actively engaged a citizen but lied to them about information pertaining to UFOs. Yeah, it can happen, and it probably still does. So in that context of all of the aforementioned, yes, we do have to question our government and whether what we are told is accurate. And if it's not accurate, if it is in our best interest not to know the truth. But further, when we look at the videos that are being released supposedly via To the Stars Academy, but from the government, yeah, we need to look at that and say, are we really being told the truth? Is what we are being shown really what it appears to be? My answer right now, I don't know. I need more evidence, and I certainly haven't seen enough.
I've got a gut feeling, and, I've beat this dead horse. It is almost dead. It's still kind of wobbling a little bit. But I've got a gut feeling it's Stephen Bassett didn't like this word when I said it, but that it's just to push back the mob, just to say, okay, they're on to something a little bit. Let's give them a little bit. Let them know we're doing something about it, so they'll shut up.
Well, it could be that aspect in the sense that we want to let them know that, yes, we take this seriously enough. It could be for the alternative reason that we're not really looking at UFOs at all, but we're going to lead the public into thinking that so that they will focus on that instead of other things. I mean, there are any number of reasons why this might be, why the circumstances as they are playing out are being, presented, I guess, in the way that they are. I mean, I don't know exactly what this is. You got to love, by the way, the little computer notification thing that pops up in the middle of a live radio show. You try and...
Are you about to fall? Is it about to crash on you, brother?
No, it's not. It's very kindly asking me how likely I am to recommend Windows 10 PC to a friend or a colleague. Well, I'll tell you what. If you'll stop asking me during live radio programs, I might consider it.
Well,
AI, brother.
The thing, when it comes to talking to you, this can go anywhere. But the real reason, what I wanted to touch on tonight was the book that I read that you wrote, which was a fascinating look at all of this. Now, how magic relates to science, spirituality and science, right? You wrote a book on it. And to me, that's what the book's about, unless I just totally misunderstood the book, And I've never quite looked at it the way you did. I mean, you're giving specific examples of a lot of things. And I think, let me ask you this. Do you think we're getting closer to realizing that I guess what you could call ancient magic, if you believe in a thing, which I do, is a real deal. Like, we're getting scientists coming to understand that there's probably something there more than what we can measure with a yardstick.
Well, that's a pretty complex question. What I would say is this, that in ancient times when people utilized magic and ritual, and right on up to modern times, I mean, there have been plenty of occultists, hermeticists, and people who have, been engaged in ritual practices. Whatever the form it takes, people have essentially done that for one reason, which is in some way, shape, or form to influence the natural course of things. They want to try and bend nature to the will of man or woman. Mm-hmm. And in doing so, over the ages, there have been many people who have become just very taken with concepts like magical practices, divination, communication with the dead. They have been very fascinated with things like trying to contact what you might, by today's standards, call alien life forms. And I don't mean extraterrestrial necessarily, but I mean non-human intelligences from perhaps another state of being, another dimensional state. I'm using modern language, but in ancient times, people had different concepts of what these things were. Again, these might have been angels from heaven or demons from hell, for that matter. These might be something, they certainly could be extraterrestrial intelligences from another planet that utilize a far more sophisticated mode of communication than we do, which relies on consciousness itself. And following, to borrow from or paraphrasing from a spiritualist book from the 1980s, finding an inner path. No, I'm sorry, actually, I'm thinking of a different book. This book actually came out in the 2000s and was co-authored by Rick Strassman, the pioneering DMT researcher, but it's Inner Paths to Outer Space was the book. It was a collection of essays. Yeah. Slavik Vojtovich, also one of the commentators who I talk about in Magic, Mysticism, and the Molecule. The point being, though, that is there something through altered states of consciousness, whether induced through a ritual or through mysticism or through actual hallucinogenic experiences where we induce a hallucination by taking a substance or something along those lines? Can we find an inner path to communicating with external intelligences? Yeah. Or are they even external intelligences? But I mean, just to answer your question, do I think that scientists today are warming up to the fact that they realize magic is a real thing? Yes and no, in the sense that the scientists of today would never call the things of yore magic. They wouldn't call it magic. They call it quantum physics. Right. But see, that's what's interesting. And to me, I don't really call it magic either. I recognize that what the magicians of the ancient past were working toward, it wasn't all right, but there were intuitive realities that they seemed drawn to. And I think that whether these things are archetypes, as Carl Jung referred to, or there is something that drives the human mind toward a sort of a rational conclusion. There are instances where, throughout history, there have been multiple discoveries made in different places by different people at different times under different circumstances, but nonetheless that led to scientific truths. That's fascinating. What is that intuition that leads us to make quantifiable discoveries through science? Again, the ancient mind would have called that magic. Yeah. But modern science, we wouldn't. Nonetheless, we're still talking about the same sort of thing. And so in the ancient past, when people used magical rituals and things, and they prayed to gods that we would really, by today's standards, say don't exist at all, well, sure, that was all kooky and crazy, but they were trying to do the same thing that scientists are doing today. We just have a more technological and a more sophisticated way of going about it. But I nonetheless think that some of the truths that we are being led to are fundamental and are the same. And we will find more and more, again, coming back to your question, that the ancient mind understood these concepts far better than people today are willing to acknowledge. Absolutely. Everything goes back to all our religions, according to my studies. Now, I mean, I guess if you wanted to put me in a category, you could call me a Hermetic Kabbalist. That's what I am. But I'm not religious, But if you go back to the ancient teachings, everything is based on, just like Mark Passio says, the Christianity, all the symbolism is based on the sun, the sun god, or that theological aspect of the sun, the rising sun, the resurrection. It's all in the cross symbolism, the Muslim symbolism of the moon. And then you have the Jewish symbolism, which it goes back to an even more ancient thing with the
six-pointed star that represents several different things. The elements, I mean, it's a much older symbol than we know. I mean, it represents the elements, the sun, the seven ancient planets are all on there as well at the tips and with the sun in the middle. So it's also, the chalice and the other thing. I can't think of the name of it at the top of my head, but it's all of that's in there, and it all goes back to astrotheology and things of that nature that we just, as a race, totally forgot about. And I might disagree with you a little bit about certain types of magic because I'm more prone to Rosicrucian style stuff where it's not really about manifesting things so much like Crowley talks about, but more of an inner journey, as you say, an inner journey to discovering things because, Christ had all these different sayings, but he was right when, the key to the kingdom of heaven is within. So we want to travel and go to outer space. Well, all kinds of people are doing that. Bob and Rose doing it. Thomas Campbell are doing it, but they're not getting in a spaceship and going to Mars. They're going into the inner realms to see these things. And speaking of Crowley, you talk about that in your book, how they managed to contact a being doing that. They called the Lamb.
Well, yeah, and I've argued about this for years because the prefix Lam is the same as the Tibetan word Lama, one who is on the path. And so the word Lam, and that's why I pronounce it that way, Lam, the way or to goeth. The idea of Lam as having been like a literal alien or something like that is sort of a weird concept to me because as I understand it through my reading, Crowley was more apt to consider that like a sort of a transdimensional or celestial representation of himself. There was nonetheless a vague similarity, albeit, there are some inconsistencies, but many have made this allusion to, well, it looks like one of the popular alien beings. What's really interesting, and again, I'm referring to, the alleged alien beings aboard UFO craft during these, Well,
it kind of does, but then it kind of don't. It's not childish type drawing, the one I've seen. It's not real detailed.
It's not really detailed. I mean, again, it really seems more to me like the image of Lam as drawn by Crowley it's a roughly human figure, but with a terribly misproportioned aspect. The head is terribly out of proportion, and it seems intentionally so. A lot of that says to me that the image is derived more from the psychic state. And I don't mean psychic in the sense of like predicting the future. I'm talking purely about the actual workings of the mind. It says more about the psychic state of Aleister Crowley at the time he drew that image. And he may have been fully cognizant of what he drew and why he drew it the way that he did. But again, remember, he calls this thing Lam. This is the path. Maybe he was, we could interpret it in many ways. What if that was him? What if he enlarged, the head for purpose of trying to say that this is the eventual path that humanity needs to go, that we make the mind. Really, you could actually almost call it like a homunculus in the sense that we have this exaggeration of the head as though, again, the mind is being inflated. And Crowley was kind of saying that the eventuality of humankind, if we progress spiritually and intelligently, etc., this is us. Funny enough, people say the same thing about ETs during these alleged UFO encounters, and I couldn't tell you if these things really happened or not. I've met Travis Walton and people like that. Mm-hmm. I would like to think that they're, absolutely telling the truth because I like Travis Walton a lot, and he's a really good guy. If this is real experience, and even if it's not, I don't doubt that people who have had the experience believe that they've had it. It's just that it may not be what it outwardly appears to be, i.e. a physical flesh and blood interaction with beings from an aircraft. Again, that's a whole different conversation we could have, but whatever that experience represents, people nonetheless look at the descriptions of the entities and say, what if that's us from the future? What if, God forbid we end up like that? We have this hive mind and we're diminutive and we're emotionless and all these kinds of things. But there seems to be this. We kind of
are with this opiate thing going on. Don't you think we kind of are a little bit?
Well, don't you think we kind of are with the opiates? Don't you think we kind of are with social media? Don't you think we kind of are with political correctness? Don't you think we kind of are with politics in general? Don't you think we kind of are with the kind of divisiveness that we see both internationally between countries like North Korea, between countries like Russia? Aren't we becoming more spiritually detached from one another? Aren't we becoming more robotic? Aren't we becoming more reliant on technology? Aren't we actually doing all those things? And so when we see ourselves in these so-called alien representations, whether they're mystically derived like LOM or if they're derived from conspiracy theories about UFO abductions, again, we project our concerns about ourselves and where we see ourselves going on to all these things, which in itself is kind of magical because we can kind of see what's happening and yet we don't do anything to kind of to reverse it. So for the magical practitioners like Crowley, they had an awareness of these kind of things, I do believe. They were trying to kind of reckon with the path of humankind and understand it through the lens of themselves, which is really what the magician does. And that brings us back around to the idea of the mysticism that you talked about, where rather than trying to, again, I don't literally think you can go draw a circle, light a fire, and summon a demon in the desert. People claim that they can do that and have for centuries. But I definitely think that in terms of understanding reality, there's a deeper level of reality that can be understood, and the path to finding that is inward, not outward.
Right. I want to talk a little, we're going to go into that more too, because that's exactly where I wanted this conversation to head. You guys don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with Micah Hanks.
You're listening to KTLK, The Fringe FM.
Hi, folks. CBD is the home run hitter for health right now. Why, you ask? Because of what it does for the body. Unfortunately, I can't tell you all about the benefit. There's reasons. Do your due diligence and log on to ancientlifeoil.com. That's ancientlifeoil.com. Ancient Life Oil uses organic ingredients and is blended in coconut oil for some of the best benefits. Legal in 50 states and non-psychoactive. Log on to ancientlifeoil.com. That's ancientlifeoil.com.
At The Fringe FM, we value your opinion and we want to hear from you. Love a program? Got a future guest or show idea? Let us know. Email us at talkback@thefringe.fm or leave us your thought by calling 501-777-5631 or message our Facebook page at The Fringe FM.
Who were the real ancient Egyptians? What is it about ancient Egypt that captivates us all? The critically acclaimed series Magical Egypt is back with all new episodes. Let Chance Gardner and company take you on another adventure through Magical Egypt in the new series Magical Egypt 2. Magical Egypt 2 attempts a forensic reconstruction of the science of the ancients through a study of ancient aesthetics. Also, the best researchers and authors in the field like John Anthony West, Graham Hancock, Laird Scranton, Robert Bouval, Lon Maladuquette, Aaron Cheek, and more join together to explore the topics of the esoteric and the hidden messages of the ancient Egyptians. Just go to magicalegypt.com right now and put in the code word FRINGE and get 10% off any download or order, including the groundbreaking original Magical Egypt series, as well as the new episodes in Magical Egypt 2. Also, check out the great work and the companion series at magicalegypt.com. Click the banner on the Fringe FM or go to magicalegypt.com and use the code word FRINGE and get 10% off your order today while it lasts.
Hi, folks. Let's wind the clocks back 60 years. Food was different. Food provided health and nutrition, and using supplements was minimal. Unfortunately, now we have chemicals, GMOs, herbicides, and pesticides that can be quite lethal in the name of our food supply, and of course the ever-loving dollar. Supplementing our diets can be very important to stay healthy. Cleansing from daily intruders to the body might be critical. Live strong and take charge. Log on to getthetea.com. Our herbal tea is a great way to cleanse from intruders. Our supplements is a great way to maintain and improve your health. When your health is not up to par, go to getthetea.com. No GMOs, no fillers, and organic. And very helpful in keeping you at the top of your game. Life is too short to feel, you know what I mean. Stay in the game, at the top of your game with getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. Again, getthetea.com.
I'm getting older and noticing that my body just doesn't work as well as it used to. So I like to keep fit as possible by hitting the gym a few times a week. Recently, I started having a nagging bicep pain, and it got so bad I couldn't even lift the weights. When I was complaining about it to a friend, he told me about Angioprim. He said chelation helps remove toxins, heavy metals, and cholesterol in veins and arteries that may cause blockages. You know, after just 1 week of taking Angioprim, the pain was gone, and now I'm back in the gym full strength. Scientific research proves the active ingredient in angioprim has superior oral chelation action that helps promote cardiovascular health. So to learn more, go to angioprim.com. That's ANGIOPRIM.com, or talk to a trained consultant. Call Angioprim toll free at 877-882-7221. You'll feel better with more energy. Call 877-882-7221 or go to the website angioprim.com.
The views and opinions expressed on this program do not necessarily reflect those of the Fringe FM, KTLK Digital Broadcasting, its sponsors, affiliates, or staff. Listener discretion is advised.
Have you ever wondered what it's like to see a UFO and have missing time? To have face-to-face contact? Be taken on board a UFO? My name is Preston Dennett. In my new book, Inside UFOs, True Accounts of Contact with Extraterrestrials, will tell you what it's like. The book contains 10 all-new cases involving a wide variety of extraterrestrials, including Nordic, praying mantis, greys, various humanoid. There's the case of a paperboy who meets a green-skinned ET, a teacher who meets a friendly Nordic, a Navy medic who meets a 15-foot-tall praying mantis, a housewife who meets a 12-foot-tall humanoid with orange hair, and much more. If you'd like to learn more about this book, please visit my website at prestondennett.weebly.com. All I can tell you is that the aliens have arrived and they're not going away.
I'm getting older and noticing that my body just doesn't work as well as it used to. So I like to keep fit as possible by hitting the gym a few times a week. Recently, I started having a nagging bicep pain, and it got so bad I couldn't even lift the weights. When I was complaining about it to a friend, he told me about angioprim. He said chelation helps remove toxins, heavy metals, and cholesterol in veins and arteries that may cause blockages. You know, after just 1 week of taking angioprim, the pain was gone, and now I'm back in the gym full strength. Scientific research proves the active ingredient in angioprim has superior oral chelation action that helps promote cardiovascular health. So to learn more, go to angioprim.com. That's ANGIOPRIM.com, or talk to a trained consultant. Call Angioprim toll free at 877-882-7221. You'll feel better with more energy. Call 877-882-7221 or go to the website angioprim.com.
This is Cortana from Shift Happens, telling you to pour a glass and park your ass because you're listening to KTLK, The Fringe FM. Shiftheads.
Welcome back to Lighting the Void. I am your host, Joe Rupe. The call-in number is 501-777-5631. We are here with Micah Hanks. The call-in number is 501-777-5631. Remember, you can call that number anytime. This show is live. This is exactly where I wanted this conversation to go with, is Micah's. I feel like, and I told you about during the break, I feel like that we have strayed away from enlightenment. And when I say that, people say, and I believe this for a long time, Micah, that everybody's waking up. We're all waking up. We're all more enlightened, and we're all moving to this area of oneness faster than we ever have before. And I don't know about all that right now. And let me just grab this phone call real quick. 403 area code. You're on the air with Micah Hanks.
Hey, Micah.
Oh God, there he is, right there.
Who's this?
How come you haven't been returning my calls, man?
D-Ron.
When did he ever call me? Huh?
I've been trying to get a hold of you.
Did your number change?
Ladies and gentlemen, D-Ron, Darren from Grimerica.
Grimes, what are you up to?
I'm just
Apart
kidding,
from
man.
apparently having, yeah, I know. Apart from apparently having another number, what are you up to?
Not too much, buddy. Figured I'd call in and see how you're doing.
Oh, I'm good, man. See, that's what's so sad is when I'm so damn busy that he has to call into a radio show just to see how I'm doing. Although this guy right here, man. So, ladies and gents, of course, you know him and love him from Grimerica.
Absolutely.
Darren Grimes is another one of these fine folks who's out here doing what we would have called God's work back in the day before Nietzsche comes along and says that God was dead, you know, and everybody else too in this modern age of thinking. So, yeah, I still think I find you holy though, Grimes, and I want you to know that I still think of you that way.
Holier than thou, anyway. Are you about to get into advocating drug use?
Well, I was going to say something too, real quick. If you guys want to hear something cool, go back on the Grimerica podcast to a Christmas special when they had mass quantities of characters on that show, including Micah Hanks. I swear I was laughing so hard I was crying because phone calls were coming in and Mike was like, guys, we're getting phone calls. I know this is a new concept, but we got to take these phone calls. And Darren's like, don't you point your finger at me, Hanks. He just kept jumping on you. And I was like, oh, man, this is classic. Because you never know what Darren's going to say. That's what I love about it.
A lot of people probably don't know that, you know, Darren, we've known each other. How long have we known each other? Since, I mean, when Gralien began, you were emailing me, which was 2011.
Yeah, 6 or 7 years anyway. We met 6 years ago, so.
Yeah, 2012, yeah. We met in Minneapolis and I actually got to hang out. And, yeah, so a lot of people will listen to those shows that we do together. It's a tradition. We've tried to, more or less every year, although I think we've missed a few, but we try to do like a Christmas thing where we all get together. And people will listen to those and they're like,
that's fantastic.
Well, a lot of people don't catch all of our humor. They don't know how well we know each other. We really all love each other. Grimes and I, when time allows, we'll get on the phone and we'll talk and everything. You know, I think the world of the Grimericans and, you know, and also, you know, the guys with Cruising with Steak, we've got a wonderful little community here. But yeah, I don't think everybody knows how well we know each other. And that makes it even funnier when they listen to the show and we get feedback about it.
Have you done DMT, Darren?
Absolutely.
Have you tried that?
Have I?
Yeah.
No, I've got like, I'm locked and loaded.
All right.
It'll probably be at some point this summer when I finish, yeah, probably at the end of the summer.
Are you going to put that on the Black Budget feed?
Ooh, I don't know yet. No, not the first time. The first time's going to be sort of sacred, you know?
Right. Damn it. I'm curious about it.
Second time, though.
I'm very curious about DMT. There's something to it for real.
See, I am too, and especially when you talk to people who have done ayahuasca. And again, I have never done ayahuasca. I haven't done DMT, in fact. I am typically not a user, and I don't speak very often publicly about that kind of a thing. But you know, I'll just let me point out something interesting. You know, so take somebody like Sam Harris, who many would consider, you know, an icon of secularism, but he's also a guy who, when he was in college, did MDMA and had a kaleidoscopic kind of a spiritual experience, and it caused him to travel to the East and study meditation because he wanted to see if these kinds of things could be accessible without having to use drugs. He wanted to understand if the spiritual experience was something innate to the human mind, and I love when I see guys like Ezra Klein attacking him in Vox and referring to him as a author on books on religion and meditation, you know, as though Sam Harris, who is one of the four horsemen of atheism, along with Richard Dawkins and the late Christopher Hitchens, that this guy is some new age, you know, religious guru and author and all this stuff. No, the guy's an atheist, but even he understands, and actually I have a lot of respect for Sam Harris, but he understands that, hey, there's something to these mystical experiences, and whether they are induced through hallucinogens or they are induced through a sort of, you know, raising one's consciousness through meditation or some other sort of an ecstatic state, or body postures also sometimes can contribute to this. Again, there is something else. There is this addenda that you have to work toward in order to be able to achieve a higher level of the human experience. There are many ways that it can be achieved, but it's not exclusive just to hallucinogens or to meditation or anything like that. Some people claim they're walking down the street and a bright light fills their eyes. They wake up a few minutes later and they think, wow, I've got a different perspective on life. What is that mystical experience? And that's the whole thing to me at the end of it all. We're all trying to find the path that is comfortable for us, but many who use things like DMT discuss having had that kind of awakening awareness too.
That's what I'm saying. Like I haven't tried any psychedelics in a long time, but I'll just say it. I know it's illegal, but if I get the opportunity, I might actually do that just to see.
Come on down. Why don't we all meet up? We'll all meet up in North Carolina and fucking go out to the Brown Mountains and eat a bunch of mushrooms.
I would love to take you guys to Brown Mountain.
Right. That'd be cool.
That would be an experience all in
I'll
itself.
bring Graham and he can chaperone us.
Oh, we definitely need a chaperone, that's for sure.
You guys should all come down to North Carolina, though. I'll get Jason, and I think Jason Pentrell, by the way, my cohort who I mentioned earlier, he's listening right now from the Seven Ages group. But, again, we got a podcast that we do, too, so those who have listened to our podcast have heard Jason. He is one of the many of the three co-hosts on that podcast. But, he's fairly close, so is Waldo. We could get a whole group of us together. It would be an absolute dream come true. Or a nightmare. Remember, nightmares are dreams, too, but we'd have a fun time.
I don't think it'd be a nightmare. I hope not.
Well, I'm kidding. Don't worry.
It could be. You never know.
Just want to get Grimes down to North Carolina.
It could
Grimes,
get weird. It could get culty.
You'd fit right in here in Asheville, though, buddy.
I'm sure I would.
Yeah, you would
fit in anywhere.
Yeah,
I'm just that right shade of. I'll leave it at that.
Well, I was up there in your beautiful country just a couple of weeks ago.
Oh yeah, you did. You just took a trip to Canada. Again?
I wasn't at Oak Island. I was in Halifax this time, but I was up in Canada, and it's different up there,
Yeah, you got to come out to the west, man. The east is kind of weird.
Yeah, well,
the farther west you go, the better it gets. But you want to stop before you get, all the way west.
Are you guys recording an episode this week? Who do you got coming on?
Who, me?
Yeah. Or you don't talk about it until it's released?
Well, I just go check. Because it'll be live.
Privileged information is what it is.
I got you.
We got Jim Lee tomorrow, and Philip J. Watt is a late show.
I think
it's like...
I told Darren to call in, Micah, after I listened to that show. I was like, listen, Micah Hanks is going to come on the show again. You got to call in and give him a hard time. And he was like, absolutely. You just let me know when.
I would count on that.
Oh, yeah, man. You can always count on that.
I know, right? Hey, Hanks, why aren't you returning my phone calls?
Thanks for calling, brother.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys have a great show.
Yeah, thanks.
Grimes, call me tomorrow. No joke.
Will do.
I might pick up.
I doubt it.
He's busting you out again.
I'll call you. How's that?
Darren from Grimerica, everybody. A podcast you guys should definitely check out if you're missing out. And that goes back to what you were saying earlier about how podcasts have a different type of engagement. They're actually doing live on YouTube now, though, so that's really cool.
I love those guys. Again, and it's no joke. I mean, Darren and I had been corresponding for years, and then we finally met up there in 2012, and he and Graham came up, and they hadn't started Grimerica yet. They started it that year. That was the beginning of that podcast, and they take a very different approach from what you and I do, which is this kind of, I don't know, it's more radio kind of a, themed sort of, I don't know, I hate to use polished, but I guess that is kind of what it is.
Yeah, it is. To be honest with you, it is. I try to polish. I want to get on terrestrial, man. I've got a couple stations thinking about it. I just don't have the technology for it. By the way, you can donate at lightingthevoid.com. No, I'm just playing. But, yeah, I just don't have the tech for it right now.
Hey, never play around with that, man. Let those people know. You tell them how they can donate to you. Again, you do a good job, and when people believe in what you do, Darren will tell you this. Darren and the Grimericans, man, they are exclusively on the value model. People donate to their program because they believe in what they do. They're fun. Darren, again, the Grimerica podcast is very deceptive in the sense that people listen to it and they think it's just a bunch of jokes and people cracking up, and Darren will be the first one to tell you that. But again, I know this because Darren and I do catch up on, and we talk on the telephone. There's a depth and there's a cerebral nature to him, and also a technical aspect to the way that Darren thinks. That I hope I'm not giving away all your secrets here, Darren. I'm sure he's still listening. But the thing is that he is so savvy and so up to speed on what's going on. He is somebody who really, as far as the podcast, and that's the distinction I wanted to make, is that you and I kind of come at it from a radio perspective, and Darren saw it from the beginning as being, I'm going to be a podcaster. I'm going to do it like a podcast. I'm going to host it like a podcast. And God Almighty, he keeps me up to speed on a lot of the technology that's becoming available to podcasters.
Yeah, he knows what he's doing, for real.
He knows what he's doing, so don't be deceived by how relaxed they sound on the air, because it's, it's fun, but that's why people enjoy it. It's fun, it's relaxed. It sounds like people that you can relate to very easily, and that's what's so beautiful about their show. But there's so much work that goes on behind the scenes. And again, their model, using that value model, it's worked for them. Donate to Grimerica, and donate to this program, Lighting the Void. Don't ever be afraid to put that out there. Anyone,
dude, I would love to get rid of. I mean, no offense to any of the advertisers. I love you guys too, but I would love to just be listener supported. That would be awesome.
Me too, and eventually that's what I really want to do. I want to go in that direction. I have a paid for content model with the Gralien Report, but eventually, I've always said this. If I thought that I could be able to do what I do based on the voluntary support of listeners alone, I would remove all fees tomorrow. I'd do it tonight, in fact.
I think you could.
Well, I just believe in that. I believe in people I believe in the goodness of individuals.
Absolutely.
And because I believe in the goodness of individuals, I want to give more of myself away to people for free. But, psychologically and otherwise, and I want to get back to the concepts that we were talking about, because I know you got things you want to talk about here, but maybe this can be a bridge to that. I believe in that deeper idea, of if you give yourself, you are, even if I'm just talking to you, I'm actually giving something away, and this is not just metaphysical mumbo jumbo. I mean, psychologically and otherwise. There was a great article, by the way, in Psychology Today titled Introversion, Extroversion, and the Highly Sensitive Person from back in, actually it was earlier this month. It was on the 13th. Elaine N. Aaron, PhD, wrote this article, and she was talking about those people who fall between introversion and extroversion. You see, everybody would listen to me and say, Micah's an extrovert. Micah's an outgoing person. He's loud. He's bombastic. I feel like an introvert, though. And if I go to a conference, if you see me at a conference and people come up to talk to me after a lecture, I mean, I'm squirming. I'm squirming. Yeah, because I love people and I want to give them all my time, and I love being on the radio. I mean, I love doing the podcasts, but at the end of the day, I've got to be able to retreat back into myself. And I've always struggled. Why do I act like an extrovert, but I feel like an introvert?
We have a mutual brother who's helped both of us. And I'm just going to, I hate to put him on the spotlight here, but Dennis Koch.
Oh, yeah.
Is an awesome individual.
Dennis is incredible.
And there are a few people and they all know who they are, who I talk to, that helped me through some things. And I can say, man, that, he's helped me through a lot of things. For sure. And talking to you two, and I don't know, I'm going to get all emotional if I start talking about this stuff, because it's been I've dealt with some challenges, brother. Like right now, I don't have a large audience per se, but it's big enough to where I've got people judging my every move now. And that's really hard for me.
Welcome to that. Well, you know what? I know Darren already dropped the F-bomb, and I won't do it because, again...
that was expected.
Yeah. I'm very careful about doing that during a live broadcast, even if it isn't FCC regulated. But you've got to understand that people who judge you without knowing you, and people who try to act as though the goodness that they can find in themselves is predicated upon how easily they can judge you, those people can go blank themselves. And this is how you have to look at the world, because, again, it's true, Joe. I've known many people like that. But I'll tell you this, any person who they think that they have to judge others and do so vocally, again, that ad hominem thing, you can't construct an argument. You just resort to attacking people to make yourself feel better. You are less than human in doing that. But they do it to make their opponents, or the people that they seek to attack, seem or feel less human so that they can bolster themselves. Again, the psychology of all this is very interesting. And I do think that this ties back into this idea of mysticism, trying to gain leverage psychically, spiritually, or otherwise. And again, there's a misappropriation of that term psychic in the modern sense that people, there's no delineation. If I say that, people say, oh, he's talking about reading people's minds and seeing the future. I'm utilizing a somewhat archaic term for just understanding the mechanics of the mind.
Yeah, sure, I get it.
Yeah. Anybody who reads a lot about this stuff, they hear that. I think that psychic can exist in terms of just the mechanics of the mind. Spirituality can be a thing that is a secular thing, and that's not bad. That's okay.
Yeah, for sure. But
what are we all working toward? At the end of the day, what do we try to do when we try to understand ourselves, the inner workings of our mind, and what we try to recognize as a spiritual experience? It's a oneness, it's a togetherness, it is a feeling of doing better with ourselves and with those around us. Those who cannot contribute constructively to that, to hell with them.
Yeah,
that's all you need to know.
That's exactly where I was going right before Darren called. Is I think when talking about the Enlightenment thing, I think that I'm a big fan of philosophy, okay, and I'm a big fan of occult literature, and it's so cool to talk about magic and mysticism and manifesting things and drawing sigils and doing rituals or lighting candles or whatever is, those things they're pretty cool, right? But what we're missing here is the fundamental structure of society that we're missing. And I have to agree with Mark Passio on this, is that we don't, and judge me if you like, but I still believe in a God. And when I say God, I don't mean like the religious term, I guess. I believe in natural law. Right? Like natural law, something created this thing, ever expanding consciousness, trying to get to higher potentials at all times. And what's happened is we have created a society to where we've made it so easy on ourselves not to do that. Like, who says this? Greg Carlwood says, arrogant ignorance is what people have. We're so quick to take orders or be told what to do, or trust everything the government says. And we allow all of these things that we know deep down inside, like just on Facebook, when people are like, don't show me those inhumane videos of animal punishment, or look how mad people get when they show the videos of cops beating and murdering people for no reason. Until that stuff is gone, I don't think we're close to enlightenment, I mean, I'm not to say I'm an anarchist or anything, but maybe I am a little bit. I don't know how to run a world without a government, but I will say that the way we're doing it now isn't right. And the occultists that are there in the government, whether it's Freemasonry or the government or whatever, like I was telling you during the break, all they do is they just use sleight of tongue. We do the rest. They get in the media, they get in our education, and they get in our religions, and they tell us what to do, think, and feel. Just move their mouth a little bit, and everything else we do all the rest. We tell them what to show us in a commercial. We blame it on them, but we're telling them what to show us so we'll buy it. We're telling them, because I don't think we have, and I hate to use this word, but I don't think we have the balls to become enlightened the way we should be right now.
Most people are afraid. Most people are also uneducated, and they haven't sought to better themselves. You said something there, Joe. You talked about finding one's higher purpose or higher self. I couldn't tell you how many times I've challenged friends of mine when I see them going through dark periods in their life, divorce, or they're going through a period of self-doubt, or they aren't making enough money, or I see them going through a period where they just, nothing in life seems to be going well for them. But I tend to, and I've seen this in myself too, sometimes your mind becomes scattered. Or the constituent parts of your mind, you might say, become scattered, and you begin to lose a sense of self. Who am I? What am I doing with my life?
Mm-hmm.
How many people have ever asked themselves that? What am I doing with my life?
Right. That's what you got. That's where you start, with the self.
And that's when I say to people, I wish you could find your higher self. I couldn't tell you how many times when I say that to them, they either don't respond or they go, yeah, okay. And they treat it as though I mean it like it's pejorative, or like I think it's a joke, or like I'm intentionally making fun of them by saying it. No, I literally mean I wish you could find your higher sense of self.
Do you believe in that, though? Like that?
Yeah.
Let's say Micah Hanks is really just a smaller form of a higher being.
I think that each of us as individuals have a potential to find the way that we, for lack of a better term, resonate with a deeper sense of self that I think extends beyond our individual self and perhaps into the infinite. to give you a good idea of nonetheless an infirm reality, but a reality nonetheless, because it's been written about extensively for several decades, Carl Jung's idea of the collective unconscious. The idea that there are things like archetypes and symbolism that are remembrances of past adaptations.
Right.
And the modern neuroscientist would look at this, they would see these things as being, little notches on the side of the evolutionary tree from the past, but the scar of the injury remains, and we can still see that, and that's something that's shared collectively by humans. Not some sort of mysticism, not some sort of... again, we know, for instance, my father was and still is, actually, even though he's in his 70s, he's still an incredibly good musician and can still play a banjo or a guitar or a violin. He can play these instruments as well as he did probably when he was in his 20s or 30s. Just an incredible musician. And naturally, my brother and I, we're also very good musicians. And I asked my 7th grade biology teacher, I said, do you think that those kinds of things are something that can be passed down? Because we were studying hereditary traits. And he said, yeah, I think they are. And studies show, obviously, that, yeah, things that are learned can be passed down to another generation, but not just hereditary traits like eye color, hair color, things like that. Over time, certain skills that are acquired, you'll notice that there is a continuity in terms of the aptitude that is carried along to the progeny. And so the broader point...
Are you talking about like natural and innate ability to do something that you were born with, or are you talking about learning a skill?
I'm talking about the parent learning a skill and then an adaptive kind of, or rather not an adaptive, but I should say that an aptitude is prevalent in the progeny, where the child seems to have a similar gift based on the learnings of the parent. And then that child, see what I mean? That child becomes a musician, and then they have kids, and their child is a gifted musician. So, again, if we were to look at these things evolutionarily in the sense that, well, perhaps certain traits acquired by the requisite member of the species nonetheless can be carried on hereditarily or otherwise, and that these kinds of things can be passed down to progeny over time. To me, if you look at the idea of Carl Jung's archetypes in that context, it's not a weird thing at all. All we're talking about is the idea that the remembrance of that past adaptation, which was beneficial evolutionarily and otherwise, is carried along, and therefore we see vestiges of these things, much further on down the line. Okay? Now, that said, when we're finding our higher self, there are aspects, I think, of the older iterations, in our evolutionary history that are nonetheless carried along. And sometimes there are opportunities, you might say, in life where these things kind of erupt into your reality, and you can find a deeper sense of yourself if you can create a harmonious relationship with these things. Jung called this the process of individuation. This is the very reason why he began to study alchemy very much at the end of his life too, Joe, because he was fascinated with alchemy because he thought that the iterations of the language used by the alchemists of yore, no, they probably really couldn't transmute base metals into gold.
Right, but here's the thing about that, and I will say this. I've talked to somebody about alchemy where he has blatantly said that even Carl Jung's alchemical definition and all of everything that he deciphered through all the symbolism and all that was great, and it's wonderful, and it's all about understanding the self, but it's definitely not true hermetic alchemy. Like, it's still some type of a secret, and that secret has to do with the light body. Now, that's kind of out there, but a natural skeptic would say, yeah, right, it's all about psychology. I'm curious to think if you think it's more than that, because you sound like you've done your work with Jung, but what about deeper aspects of alchemy?
Well, again, the alchemy of spirit or soul. Again, I don't think that this really has to do with transmuting base metals into gold.
Right.
But I think that's a very superficial kind of understanding of what alchemy is intended to be. I do think that Jung was onto something with regard to the idea of psychological
Absolutely.
benefit.
Why do we have dreams with visions of things that we know as an archetype in our mind? When I was a child, I would have visions of things that I didn't understand what they were till later. How is that possible?
I know, yeah. But here's what's sad, and I do want to come back to your question, but you mentioned, and I do want to go a little further back, you'd mentioned that, the modern skeptic mind might say that, this is all psychology. Well, yeah, they did at one point. Now, the modern skeptic tries to say that Jung was wrong, and his methods were pseudoscientific, and what he was espousing actually was not rooted in science either, and that, again, I'm concerned that there is a hyper-materialism in especially the Western world these days where...
Absolutely there is.
We know, yeah, Joe, we no longer see, and by we I mean the hyper-materialists, we no longer see the merit of things like symbols. We no longer see merit in understanding the relationship between the human mind and what we interpret in the symbols. We no longer see the merit in things like philosophy. We have an academic, and yes, I'm going to say it, although it's a strong term, we have an elitist contingency in academic Western thought that wants to say, rather than that we can learn from the past experiences and the thought processes of the philosophers who committed laboriously to paper their ideas and their ruminations on thought processes and the actions and evidences of what is going on in the mind, they're so arrogant as to say that that's all dead, that philosophy is dead, it hasn't kept up with science. We can now use a CAT scan or an MRI machine, and we can actually study through neurological or neurobiology. We can now look at science as being a better way. Sure, we can learn a lot from science. Science is, I think, the best tool at our disposal, but to say that it is the only tool, I've always disagreed with this. And again, when I hear astrophysicists, popular ones who appear on television programs and things like this, yeah, I'm talking about Neil Tyson. I like Neil Tyson a lot, and I've gone and heard him speak at an actual event here in town. He's great, but I don't think that he really has a grasp on the deeper concepts of the philosophy that he says is dead. I don't think he even understands it. I think he is...
It's almost like he's pushing for it. I mean, because he's a hell of a marketer. When it comes to marketing, I mean, there's some valid stuff there. Like what I mean by that is he goes on all the right shows. He appears in all the right stuff. He's gotten his name out there. There's several scientists that are just as good as him. But he is, it seems to me, I don't want to sound paranoid or conspiratorial again, but that he's pushing a movement to step away from metaphysics as a whole.
I think most of these people are trying to do that because there are perhaps a number of reasons why. Metaphysics, philosophically, or in the sense of, because there's a division of philosophy, metaphysics, but then there's also the idea of philosophy, outside of philosophy, of just what we call in the more New Age sense metaphysical, which it's not really a misappropriation of a term. It's just that these terms over time are applied to different things. Sometimes one idea or term is borrowed from one concept and applied to another when there is a lack of a term for that concept. Fundamentally, you might say that all of these things are metaphysical that we're talking about tonight. But again, the move away from really what I would call it is, again, anything that seems immaterial, anything that we can't measure, study, look at under a microscope is cast to the wayside, including concepts. And hence, the modern hyper-materialistic Western academician similarly relegates philosophy to that camp. They say philosophy is dead. It's not to say that we can't learn from the writings of philosophers of the past, but what we are wasting our time doing is trying to present new philosophical commentaries when science can do the job for us, when we can put things under a microscope.
Right, and you don't agree with that.
No, I don't agree with that. No, I don't.
Either.
Because, and this coming back to what you're describing here, do I think that there's a way to find a higher sense of the self? I think that many philosophers did that. It is both what we're seeing in the philosophical writings of Kant or of Nietzsche. If we look at, if we look at guys, who again were providing more of like a social commentary, but it was philosophical nonetheless. George Orwell, people like this, but especially Kant. These guys, they were working through problems in their mind, but like with Kant, he was trying to kind of unify the idea of moral principles with religion, in the sense that he didn't want to be religious, he wanted to be more secular, but he wanted to find if there was merit to religion, which again comes back to Sam Harris and guys like this. Again, what we're doing these days, the secular philosophers and the secular spiritualists, they're saying we don't have to believe in some old guy with a beard in the sky, with a bunch of angels, with little harps and stuff floating around. We can nonetheless read religious texts and we can see that there are truths. Perhaps they're archetypal, perhaps mythologies from around the world share ultimate truths that are based on past experiences, or perhaps it's all just symbolism from within the mind. But what we take away from it is an eternal truth that gives us something that is common to humankind, and that if utilized in the right way, we can use to better ourselves. Meditation, again, an altered state. Can we induce an altered state without having to take drugs? But do we learn something about ourselves from that altered state? Again, the modern magician is the person who can be the secular spiritualist. But we're still trying to achieve that same end goal of reaching a higher sense of ourselves through changing the way that we perceive reality.
Yeah, that's kind of why I had this debate about astral travel and out-of-body experiences. There's a whole... I didn't believe in it, but now I do. Why? Why do I believe in it? Well, I kind of started going inside myself until I had the experience. And I really narrowed that down. I mean, I've done a lot more to get there, but I applied some, I guess you could say, Western occult teachings to get to that point. Now that I know that place is real, at least for me, what am I to do? Am I supposed to go there and play around, or do I need to use it? Israel Regardi would have you believe that it's not a place to play around, it's a place to develop your higher self. Meanwhile, there's tons of videos out there talking about flying around, and I've had other people say, well, look, it's your higher self. There's no rules or morality here to this whole thing. It's not like you're going to hurt somebody. But again, I think it's about the choices we make. Now that I'm in there, maybe it's time to learn something instead of just trying to fly around. But flying is fun. Sounds crazy, doesn't it?
No, not at all. But again, I'm just trying to understand one or two things. Is there an actual, not a disassociative state where we hallucinate that we're doing that? I mean, I want to know, are we actually able to separate consciousness from the physical body and do that?
Thomas Campbell says yes. Robert Monroe says yes.
Many people say yes, yeah. Or is it, as you have pointed out to me, you were the very one who brought to my attention on a after-hours chat one night, that some perceive it as being entirely a construct, a mental construct, but that psychologically, nonetheless, it's something that's instructive and we can learn something from. But that's fascinating to me.
Well, if you kind of look at hermetics, you could say if the as above, I below, as above, I below, as above, so below type deal, I think the whole thing, this could be one giant mind we're in.
Oh, which brings us back to the simulated reality, right? Yeah.
The rabbit hole is getting deep now, isn't it?
Exactly, and this is what I love. I don't ever get to have these kind of conversations. People always want to talk about stupid stuff, I'm not saying that like UFOs and interesting ghosts are stupid, but I definitely think that our perception of those things are either or are both at once a physical reality which we have yet to warm up to and understood through physical, relationships with our environment and scientific study, and or these are vestiges of something deeper in the archetypal mind that are something, but we perceive them as something else because that's the only way that we can relate to them in reality.
Yeah, well, we're just defining them with what we have to define with. But if Daskalos can move, I forget if it was a pair of scissors or a knife on a drawer in the astral realm, which he called exomatosis, I believe. Robert Monroe said he pinched a woman, and a woman actually felt the pinch. Thomas Campbell said you could do it, but he had a more scientific way of explaining it. Then you watch the movie Ghost, where that guy yells, "You got to do it from your gut." I think the potentiality of the human is what we're missing here because we're being blinded by all of this. God, I don't want to say this because I promised I would never say this, by all this new agey stuff.
That's okay. Great. I'm glad you said that because you know what? You're broadening your own horizons terminologically and otherwise by saying that. It's okay. It's a word. Use that word. Here, let me throw a weird one at you. I met a dead friend of mine last night.
Really? That's interesting.
Didn't expect me to say that yet?
No, I didn't.
I'll tell you exactly who it was and what my relationship with him was and what I think about that experience. No, in a dream, I was in a train station. Now think about the symbolism of this. We were hopping on and off of trains, and the trains kept coming to pick us up, but every time we would stop and they would drop us off at another little station, I would meet people from my life. And a girl that I'd gone to high school with named Amanda, who I haven't seen in years, was my companion, got off the train with me and said, well, we've got some time to kill, so let's go and we'll just sit down. And as we're walking down into the station, it's an old brick. It looks like maybe like an early 1920s train station, There's a friend of mine who died just a couple of years ago. His name was Joshua. He went to school with me. He was in my band. I had a heavy metal band back in the day, and he was the other guitar player. Josh was diagnosed with a like a tumor in his head. It was a brain tumor. And initially they had conducted a surgery and removed it, but and unfortunately it went into remission, and then it came back and the tumor continued to grow despite the removals, and eventually it claimed his life. And right before he died, I went with my good friend Michael and my brother Caleb, and the three of us went and we hung out with Josh. And at that point, it was affecting so much of his brain that the entire left side of his body was immobile. He couldn't move. He was unable to articulate speech any longer. He could understand, he could hear and see, but he couldn't speak. And he had very limited motor capabilities. But when we came, there was a change that came over him, and we spent a good afternoon with him. I'll never forget how he looked at me. He didn't have to be able to speak to be able to look at me and say, "You're here. I can't believe you're here, man. I'm so happy to see you." The entire time we're sitting there with him, he never said a word, but we would all have remembered the experience as though he had been talking with us and we were talking back to him. It was very strange. And when he passed away,
did it feel real though?
Absolutely. No. See, what I'm describing here though is an actual real experience. Us going to see him that last time. Now in the dream last night, it was strange.
That's what was getting at. Is did the dream feel real though?
The dream was distinctly a dream. It didn't feel like anything more than a dream. But as my friend Amanda and I walked down into the deeper portions of this train station, I see Josh. He didn't look like he looked when he died. It was the Josh from back when we were in high school. He had longer hair. He was sitting there. He had full motor function. He didn't see me, and when I went up to see him, I reached my hand out, and then he vanished. And somebody came up and said something about that. And I remember I was nearly in tears because I was like, my God, I think I just saw a ghost.
Did you feel those emotions in the dream?
In the dream. And I remember going down and trying to talk to Amanda about it, and she was kind of like, whatever, all right, I'm going to go down here. She was being cantankerous, but I woke up from that dream thinking, I think I really saw Josh. But then again, what did I really see? I had a memory in a dream. Well, what is a memory and what is a dream?
Right.
And how is the fact that it was a memory within a dream of my friend and that I saw him? So now I'll tell you, it was vivid. It didn't feel like it was anything more than a dream, but it was very, very, very vivid. The white T-shirt, the black jeans he was wearing, his hair was back in a ponytail. It was remarkably vivid.
But see, Micah, this is where I'm telling you that the people, they point their finger at the Western occult system, whether it's Freemasonry, Rosicrucianism, Golden Dawn, whatever. But it all goes back to the Kabbalah. That's what they're all talking about, the Kabbalah. If you dig deep enough, you'll know what I'm saying is right about this. And that Kabbalistic tree helps you navigate those realms. And they don't teach you this stuff when you first walk into these schools, especially Freemasonry. You probably never go anywhere in there unless you're actually real speculative and you end up somewhere. But you start learning how to use what Jung talked about, the archetypes, all the different things, and move in between these realms. And a lot of people are claiming themselves to be adepts today, but an adept can move in between all of these realms and use the symbolism of what he's learned through all the studies, whether it's the Kabbalah, the tarot, all that's just training. All of the symbolism, all of the stuff you learn, everything. It's not about manifesting a frog with a wand. It's about being able to go into these realms and navigate these realms and be able to manifest other things in your life. Yes, there have been magicians that, have manipulated other people, because the whole theory is all minds are connected in these realms. So while someone is sleeping, I could cast a spell on them doing certain things, and it works if I do it right every time at this planetary alignment with this symbol and yada, yada, yada. But to me, it's all about, they're missing the big picture, is all about self-realization, which a lot of movies, people wonder about, movie symbolism. That's what it's all about, all of them. Each one of them have that in there, the steps to learning the self-realization, whether it's Star Wars, Fellowship of the Ring, whatever movie you want to talk about, it's all in there. We know deep down inside ourselves that this is true, and we express it through art all the time. And we call ourselves enlightened, and yet we're slaves to technology and social media. Now we got people killing themselves trying to live forever because they're trying to combat natural law, which is life, death, and resurrection. Natural law is what we got to get back to, what the ancients used to teach.
Yeah, although I think that science can contribute to that. The problem is that, there is this side of ourselves where perhaps in future generations that will become an innate part of ourselves. But our physical, biological, spiritual selves, whatever we are right now, we're not ready for that. We're not ready to remove the essence of the mind from the body and transpose it, carry it into another being and put it in another person. These transhumanist concepts are concepts alone. The idea of the mind or the body or the soul persisting indefinitely, or being able to move out of this body once this one's worn thin and we move into another avatar. These kind of things, or existing in an intangible data cloud like the World Wide Web, apart from the necessity for a body.
But these people are trying to live in their bodies forever. Even and when I say those biohackers, even if they have to put machines or chips in their bodies, the transhumanist agenda is a scary thing, man. It's kind of like Mordor, if you ask me.
Well, at some point you begin to realize that the continuation of the self leads to something apart from the self. You are no longer what you once were. There's this great, one of my favorite episodes of Doctor Who of all time was called Deep Breath. It's one of the fairly new ones. It was the first episode with the last Doctor, Peter Capaldi, the Scottish actor. Jodie Whittaker, of course, having taken over the role since then, and we're eagerly awaiting her appearance as the first female Doctor, and I'm confident she's going to do a magnificent job. Capaldi's first episode, again, it was a slow build, and a lot of people weren't immediately sold on it, but I loved it because here's this old man who, despite being 2,000 years old, he actually looks younger in this older body than he actually is. And he's trying to remember why he picked this face. There's this idea of the simulacra. He wants to understand why this is the visage that he has adopted. Meanwhile, the antagonists in this episode are these robots, who have traveled back in time and then got stuck in the past in the time of the dinosaurs. And they have existed and persisted for millions of years. And he encounters them in 1890s London. And they've existed for this, incredible...
Well, is this a movie? I've never heard of this before. Is this a movie or a book?
This is no. This is actually a television series, Doctor Who.
Oh, Doctor Who. Okay, gotcha.
Doctor, it's the longest running sci-fi television
I've
program.
seen a few episodes of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that first episode of Peter Capaldi, the 12th Doctor's iteration, it's called Deep Breath. It's about an hour and a half long. It was a lengthier special for the launch of the new season. But these robots from the past, they have lasted by claiming parts of biological organisms and incorporating them into themselves. And at one point, Capaldi's doctor is having this dialogue with the leader of them. And he says, you probably don't even remember where you got that face. And he's explaining to the thing that they have amassed so much biology over the millions of years of their persistence that they are no longer what they once began as. They were once robots, but they have taken so much biology into themselves in this process of indefinite self-replication. And again, they are essentially immortal because of this. But they are not what they once were. And he holds up a mirror and says, you probably don't even remember where you got that face. And the robot has this strange moment of stepping outside of being a robot and remembering and reflecting on the fact that, wow, who am I? I'm no longer what I once was. I'm so different from what I began as that I don't even recognize myself. And the doctor, meanwhile, is looking at the other end of the reflective plate and seeing his own face and thinking the same thing. We all kind of do that. But with transhumanism, it's like we're so hell-bent on trying to live forever that we don't know what we will be at the end of forever.
Yeah, but that's right. It's not natural.
What are we going to be? It wasn't natural, again, for these robots to live indefinitely, and they're cannibalizing and consuming Londoners, in order to be able to live forever. I mean, in some capacity, there's one side of transhumanism that we see as a utopia, and then there's the other side that will... I literally see these transhumanist robots millions of years from now who have made them... Well, they achieved it. They did it. They found a way to live.
They're dead inside.
You're dead inside, and you're not what you once were, and you don't even know who you are anymore.
Right. I'm not saying we can't... Potentiality is what I'm saying. Like, we could live maybe 200 or 300 years, or we could be an advanced society like the ancient Egyptians that understood qualities of the universe that we're trying to figure out now because we've decided to let other people tell us what to think, say, and do when it comes to religion and education and all that stuff. We burnt down libraries. We did everything we could to stupefy ourselves. And now we're trying to get back there with not much information, some pretty decent science. And what's happening now is everybody's just falling in love with all the, I think, kind of like the unicorn type versions of all the pretty and fantastical stuff of occultism and mysticism, instead of getting back to the philosophical start of initiation, which was to work on the self, to try to understand nature and natural laws, and not to inflict your will upon other people. We don't need governments and cops and religions to tell us to do that. It's right there, you know. And until we even get halfway there, I don't think we could say we're even close to waking up.
Well, yeah, you know, government and cops and things like this, and even religion, they play an important role for some, I think, for a lot of lives. And to say that is not to say that we don't need them. The problem is that I think for a lot of people, that is, again, all there is to reality.
Yeah.
And for other people, I think that they feel we would be better without those things. I don't. You know, I
What's
can't
the answer there? That's what I want to ask Mark Passio, because I kind of agree with him about natural law. I do. But if we're going to annihilate government and everything else, I'm with you on this. What's the answer? What do we do with somebody that murders somebody or steps out of line? Do we just, you know, or does something that's not natural or inflicts their will? Do we let the crowd and the mob deal with them, you know?
I would be very afraid of what a crowd or a mob.
Right. So what's the answer? I don't understand the anarchist answer. That's what I'm trying to understand. I'm with them all the way up to that point.
There's the anarchist, and then there's also the libertarian. And, you know, I've been accused of being too libertarian in the past, but the funny thing is I actually consider myself a centrist, and I don't particularly consider myself a libertarian. I consider myself not apolitical, but not someone who convenes to a far left or right ideology.
Right.
But there was the New York Times article the other day that was talking about how centrists are the ones who are truly, in opposition to government and who are antagonistic toward it. I don't think that that's right. I think that that's a misappropriation of the idea of what centrism is. They're mistaking centrism, a person who is politically, what would you call it, politically non-binary? They're mistaking that for being a person who is a hardcore anti-government type, either libertarian in the sense that we don't need regulations on the market, allow capitalism to lead truly, or anarchism in the sense that we don't need government at all, and let's just, it's a free-for-all, but that really the self-regulation of the natural state of humans coexisting will take care of itself. Hey, guess what? Newsflash, it did that for, again, millions of years. I don't know that we were any better for that. Right. In the terms of conscious evolution and not just biological evolution, I'd like to think that the formation of societies and civilization has done a lot for the furtherance. Look at the technology around us. Look at the homes over our heads. Look at the assurance that if a person does us wrong, there are, even if they aren't always effective, we got a lot of problems, sure, but there are at least legal recourses that we can hope will help us regain our footing and that will bring justice, because we have a concept of what justice is. We have a concept of what justice is because we have a state, we have laws, and we have, a citizenry, and we all play a part in that body.
Well, I tell you what, we got to end this thing, Micah. You guys need to go to MicahHanks.com. I'm going to see if I can talk Micah into doing just a few more minutes with me for the subscribers. And I'm going to say a few, I mean only a few. But you got anything to say or to declare before we end this show, Micah?
Well, absolutely. I mean, we could talk all night, but please check out MicahHanks.com, which is my website. Gralien Report, Gralien Report.com, which is where you can find my podcasts. If you like news and current events and some of the stuff we were just kind of getting into here, middletheory.com, and then finally archaeology and history enthusiasts, definitely check out 7ages.org. All of these sites have podcasts associated with them.
Thank you so much, Micah, for coming on the show. We'll have to do it again, brother.
My pleasure, brother.
All right, guys, that's it. Micah Hanks. Great show. I'm going to try to do a few more minutes with him here. You can subscribe at lightingthevoid.com if you want to catch that part of the show as well. Don't forget the show was brought to you by the Fringe FM and cannot be rebroadcast or syndicated without written permission. Music was by Chronox, Cassiopeia, and Space Station. Tomorrow night, John Brisson. I'll see you guys.